Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we do another deep dive into Netflix. And with that, let's get to the list. Leave the World Behind is a 2023 apocalyptic psychological thriller, written and directed by Sam Esmail. It stars Mahershala Ali, Julia Roberts, and Ethan Hawke. A family's getaway to a luxurious rental home takes an ominous turn when a cyber attack knocks out their devices, and two strangers appear at their door.
The Wi-Fi isn't working. Get a pad.
I'm so sorry to bother you, but this is our house.
I've heard the buzz about this for the last month or so now, but I just hadn't got around to checking it out. And I finally did, and I get it. I understand why everybody was buzzing about it, because this is extremely well done. It doesn't feel like anything that would go straight to streaming. In a lot of ways, it feels like something that should have got a theatrical release. But, you know, Netflix, that's just not how they work. I don't exactly understand why they don't put a lot of them in theaters. It seems like the only ones they put into theaters end up being ones that are not very good, but then the ones that they don't put out in theaters end up being the bangers. So I don't know, but either way, I think this is an extremely well done movie. The cast is great, the story, the plot, the dialogue, everything feels real and organic, which gives it that absolutely terrifying feel. Because in a real world kind of sense, this movie I found to be very scary. And because of how realistic and how now this movie is what makes it creepy, but it also is what will make it probably not age all that well, because I could definitely see this being one of those movies like we look back on the movies from the 80s that are very Cold War centric and don't exactly fit anymore and are not exactly creepy to the modern audience now, but they were at the time. And this kind of feels like something that could fall into that category. But I do think if you enjoy hyper real, intense thrill rides, this is one you should definitely check out. Thanksgiving is a 2023 slasher horror movie, directed by Eli Roth and written by Roth and Jeff Rendell. It's based on Roth's mock trailer of the same name from the 2007 movie Grindhouse. It stars Addison Rae, Patrick Dempsey, and Rick Hoffman. After a Black Friday riot ends in tragedy, a mysterious Thanksgiving-inspired killer terrorizes Plymouth, Massachusetts, the birthplace of the infamous holiday.
I used to love this town. Until what happened that night.
I absolutely fell in love with this movie last year. I must have seen it at least a half a dozen times. It was playing at the drive-ins near me, and that's where I do a lot of my editing. I just sit in the car and kind of have a movie on in the background, sometimes pay attention, a lot of times just kind of have it as background noise as I'm doing my editing. And this is one that was in the background for me many, many nights. It's just so much fun to me. I get that it's not for everyone. The sense of humor that it has, that campy kind of humor, I think was lost on a lot of people. It is dark and morose and creepy, but mostly it's kind of a throwback. It's a throwback to the late 90s, early 2000s kind of slashers, ones that you weren't supposed to really take too serious, kind of like I Know What You Did Last Summer and movies like that, where the story and dialogue and everything was campy, but just in the right way. And I've heard quite a few people complain that the characters aren't likable, and I argue they're not really meant to be. They're meant to be just cannon fodder, just people to be killed in the most brutal, vicious ways. That's the fun of a slasher, and especially one that's done in this kind of way. But it has some fantastic kills and well done gore. I'm just so excited that it's finally streaming now on Netflix, because that just means a much wider audience will get a chance to check this out. So if you have yet to see this, do yourself a favor and check it out. At other times, it gets dark and weird and twisted and very uncomfortable, dealing with some pretty heavy subjects. And I gotta say, this is one of my absolute favorite performances from Chris Hemsworth. He's very weird and very goofy and definitely not what you expect and what you're used to from him. Think a little more Thor Ragnarok type of character, but even weirder and more silly than that. We just found this to be very interesting, really entertaining. It's not really horror, although there are a few scenes that definitely lean in that direction. It's mostly a sci-fi thriller, but it's one that I think you'll have a great time with, so absolutely add it to your list.
You just never know where the day's gonna take you.
Coming Home in the Dark is a 2021 New Zealand psychological thriller. Directed by James Ashcroft and written by Eli Kent, it stars Daniel Gillis, Eric Thompson, and Miriam McDowell. Ruthless drifters take a school teacher and his family on a nightmarish road trip that forces the man to confront his past self.
Helen? No, I'm serious. I had to organise a fundraiser with Jenny and it was impossible. Yeah, I got so angry I almost said something.
Talk about bleak and dark and disturbing. This movie is not for everyone, and it's a big warning up front because I've recommended this before, and some people have thanked me for recommending this, and then others have been like, what did you recommend me? This scarred me, this messed me up. And I apologize about that, but on this channel, I recommend movies that I think are quality, that I think are deserving of a viewing. That doesn't mean they're always gonna be fun or happy, but just well put together, well done stories. And this has fantastic acting, the cinematography, editing, everything about the pacing of it. This is just a really well put together film. But it falls into that same category as See No Evil. Movies that are just not gonna be for everyone. They're movies that are depressing on some level and dark and uncomfortable and just really disturbing. But this is a well-told, layered, impactful story, and one that for the right audience is an absolute must-see. The Cave is a 2005 action horror movie. Directed by Bruce Hunt, it stars Cole Hauser, Eddie Cibrian, Morris Chestnut, and Lena Headey. Bloodthirsty creatures await a pack of divers who become trapped in an underwater cave network.
There's an enormous cavern about 300 feet down, just below the cave entrance.
It's awesome.
Which then leads to this underwater passageway.
See you in 12 days, boys.
So after talking about something as melancholy as Coming Home in the Dark, I wanted to talk about something that's just fun. And that's where this lands. This lands in that early 2000s Anaconda, Congo, kind of a silly, not something to take serious, creature feature kind of horror movie. And this one is just so entertaining. The creatures are fun, the whole premise and idea, the way it looks, the pacing of it. It's full of action, and as it goes, it gets more and more over the top. It's definitely not a movie to take serious. It is campy. It gets wild and unrealistic, but in a way that I find very entertaining. So absolutely give this one a look. Don't Worry, Darling is a 2022 psychological thriller directed by Olivia Wilde from a screenplay by Katie Cibrian. It stars Florence Pugh, Harry Styles, and Chris Pine. While her husband leaves home every day to work at a top-secret facility, a young 1950s housewife begins to question her life when she notices strange behavior from the other wives in the neighborhood.
Welcome to the Victory Project. We're all here because we believe in the mission.
What are we doing?
Changing the world.
What are we doing?
Changing the world.
That's right.
I'm not exactly sure what happened with this movie. I think maybe the expectations were too high. The cast, the way it was promoted, the trailer, I think it just led people to expect more than what this movie delivered. And on top of that, the whole Olivia Wilde, Harry Styles, Florence Pugh, the whole news. I don't even know exactly what happened. I don't really know a lot of the story. I just know that there was a lot of talk and a lot of kind of shade thrown at different people involved in this movie. But that's neither here nor there. To me, that has nothing to do with the actual film itself. And I think it's actually pretty damn good. For a psychological thriller, it does exactly what I want from one. It teases my brain and keeps me guessing on what exactly is going to happen and what direction it's going to take. And I also think it has a nice payoff at the end, and not one that everybody guessed. At least I didn't know what was going to happen at the end of this. It's well acted and performed. And Florence Pugh, she just blows me away in everything that she's in. And once again, she's incredible in this. So if for whatever reason you have yet to see this at this point, I think it's high time that you do, because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
That's not gonna be enough. That's not gonna be nearly enough.
Calibre is a 2018 psychological horror thriller. Written and directed by Matt Palmer, it stars Jack Lowden, Martin McCann, and Tony Curran. A shocking deed turns their weekend trip into a nightmare, and now their only hope is to swallow their paranoia and act normal. Okay, so this falls into that same category in a lot of ways as Coming Home in the Dark. It's another hyper-real situation, something that goes wrong and gets more and more dark, more uncomfortable and upsetting as it goes. And this is another one that's really well done. The cast do a great job. The dialogue feels so real and natural. These two friends feel like actual friends. Just the whole situation, the way it plays out, it's easy to get sucked into this world and believe that the things you're seeing are really happening. And so because of that, I found it to be really impactful, upsetting, uncomfortable, something that definitely stuck under my skin long after I've seen it. So if you're looking for an uncomfortable, dark, emotional thrill ride, this is a great pick. The Seventh Day is a 2021 supernatural horror movie, written and directed by Justin P. Lang. It stars Guy Pearce, Vedder Derbez, Stephen Lang, and Keith David. A renowned exorcist teams up with a rookie priest for his first day of training. And as they plunge deeper into hell on earth, the lines between good and evil begin to blur.
What did the Archbishop tell you about me?
You're the best exorcist there is.
What he didn't tell you was that they can teach you the prayers, but that's not what separates us from your average priests. You need to be willing to put yourself at risk.
I've talked about it quite a bit here on the channel, how burned out I am of religious horror. It's just, when it's done right, it's phenomenal, but so many times there's just nothing new about them and everything just kind of feels very rinse repeat. And I'm not going to say that this is a game-changing one or anything that is bringing anything super new to the table, but I do think it's an entertaining one. So this is a pick that's more for people that are fans of this subgenre. Movies to do with demonic possession, exorcism, occult, all of that stuff. If you're into religious type of horror, that subgenre, this is one that's for you, because I think this one is a lot of fun. For one, Guy Pearce is great in it. I am just such a fan of his. It seems like everything he's in, he just fully commits to whatever role he's playing. And it's really a shame because he's way underrated. You just don't hear people talk about him, especially anymore. You don't see him given these really great roles very often, but when he does get something, you can see that he fully puts himself into that role. On top of that, I really love the way this movie looks. It has this gritty quality, this kind of real world sense. It's well shot and directed, especially for something that's not a super high budget movie. So go into this with your expectations in check, and I think you'll have a good time.
Back up! If you don't wake up, you're gonna die.
Gerald's Game is a 2017 psychological horror movie, directed by Mike Flanagan and based on Stephen King's 1992 novel of the same name. It stars Carla Gugino, Bruce Greenwood, and Henry Thomas. The story follows a married couple on holiday at an isolated house. When the husband dies of a sudden heart attack, it leaves the wife handcuffed to the bed. And with little hope of rescue, she must find a way to survive while battling her inner demons.
Gerald?
What? What's happening? Gerald!
We hear quite a bit about Mike Flanagan, especially when it comes to his series. But I don't think we hear enough about a lot of his movies. And this is one that I just don't think enough people talk about because it is incredible. It is so impactful, heart-wrenching. It's disturbing, it's uncomfortable. There are some scenes in this that are absolutely haunting and just devastating. But the way it looks overall, the cinematography, the color grade, the design, the way the lighting is done, just everything about how this is put together is fantastic. On top of that, Carla Gugino is phenomenal in this. She always is incredible, and this might be my favorite performance of hers, but she just continues to do one after another great performances the last 10 years. And once again, a female lead who does not get the recognition she deserves. This movie is brilliant. It's captivating and heart-pounding, and one that I highly, highly recommend. The Rental is a 2020 psychological thriller, co-written, produced, and directed by Dave Franco in his feature directorial debut. It stars Dan Stevens, Allison Brie, and Sheila Vand. Two couples rent a vacation home for what should be a celebratory weekend, but they soon begin to suspect they are being watched.
Charlie! Tell me that's not a camera.
So I've recommended this one other time in the past, and when I did, I had a few of you guys complaining at this movie for different reasons, but mostly saying it was boring, etc. This is a slow burn. You know, it is. It's a psychological slow burn. It's a movie that really kind of feels like a slice of life for a while and feels like a drama, but then as things go along, it starts to get more and more uncomfortable. It's a movie that just lives in that world. And I personally find ideas that this movie deals with to just be terrifying, but in a real sense, in a real world kind of situation. This doesn't live in a world of supernatural. It doesn't live in a world of things that rarely, maybe in a weird scenario, could happen. No, this is real world kind of stuff. This is something that we've seen stories in the news where things happen pretty similar to what goes down in this movie. But it's well written. All the characters to me felt like real people, felt like friends I've had, feel like people that you would know, that you can identify with. And that just adds a whole different level of discomfort to it. It gets intense and uncomfortable, but it's one that you got to be patient with because it does take its time getting there. It slowly develops this situation, and so then when you're there, it is that much more intense. I found it to be really well done and captivating, and one that I think is a perfect pick for this weekend. So do yourself a favor, pick one of the movies off of this list, grab your popcorn and your candy, and enjoy! All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for checking this out. If you enjoyed this, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and ding that little bell, because that is the best way to keep track of this channel. And when I post videos like this, and I post videos like this every single week, I also want to give a huge, massive, enormous thank you to the Ghost Pirate crew, to you guys over on Patreon, and to the channel members over here. You guys absolutely mean the world to me. And if you would like to help support this channel over on Patreon, there's a link down in the description. Or if you want to become a channel member and help support the channel that way, there's a button right down there that says join. But like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button. And remember, guys, horror can be fun. And if you enjoyed this, click right here to watch me talk about 10 recommendations over on Shudder. And I'll see you guys next time.